The mindset of impactful communication. Words are the currency of influence. Every sentence you speak either builds bridges or burns them. Every phrase you utter either shapes a destiny or shatters a dream. Yet in a noisy world where everyone is speaking, shouting, and screaming for attention, the ones who are truly heard are not those who say the most, but those who speak with impact. Today, I want to show you how less can truly become more and how you can use your voice, your words, and your silence as tools to change conversations, command rooms, and create results. The average human speaks about 16,000 words a day. But here's the truth: most of those words vanish into thin air, never remembered, never acted upon, never repeated. Why? Because they lacked weight. Speaking with impact isn't about being loud. It's not about having the most vocabulary or sounding the smartest in the room. It's about saying what matters with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Let me ask you this: when was the last time someone spoke a single sentence that stayed with you for years? Maybe it was a teacher who said, "I believe in you." Maybe it was a mentor who said, "You're playing small." Maybe it was a leader who said, "Let's build this together." One sentence, yet it shaped the way you saw yourself. This is the power of impact. It's the reason great leaders are remembered. It's the reason Martin Luther King Jr. only needed 11 words, "I have a dream that one day," to spark a movement. It's why Jesus could transform a life with just 2 words: "Follow me." Here's a principle I live by: never speak just to fill silence, speak to fill purpose. Think of your words like arrows. Every arrow should have a target. Every sentence should move a thought, a decision, or an action forward. Before you speak, always ask yourself, what is the point of this? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? If you can't answer those 3 questions, you're not ready to speak. The most impactful communicators are not those who speak the longest, they are those who speak the clearest. They leave people saying, "I will never forget what he said." What is one sentence someone once said that changed your life? What was powerful about it? Those are rhetorical questions, but from your response, do you see what just happened? We remember impact, not information. And today I want to teach you how to become the kind of speaker people remember, even if you only speak for 30 seconds. Words, they are one of the most powerful forces on earth, invisible, weightless, yet able to build empires or burn them to the ground. Every day you and I spend them like currency. Thousands of words pass from our lips. But if I asked you right now, how many of the words you spoke last week changed anything, you might struggle to answer. Most people speak simply to be heard, but those who change the world speak to be remembered. We live in a generation addicted to noise. Everyone is speaking, on phones, on podcasts, on stages, on screens. Everyone wants to say something. But here's a truth that separates leaders from talkers, influencers from chatterers. It's not how much you say that makes an impact, it's how deeply what you say lands. The world doesn't remember speeches, it remembers sentences. I have a dream, Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, we can, Barack Obama. Ask not what your country can do for you, John F. Kennedy. Follow me, Jesus Christ. None of these statements were long, none were complex, yet they moved generations, inspired nations, and shaped destinies. Why? Because impact is not about length, it's about weight. Today, I want to help you understand that your voice, no matter how soft, no matter how few your words, carries enormous potential. And if you learn to speak with impact, you will never have to compete for attention again because your words will demand it. Let's begin here. Words create worlds. Every idea that exists today, every movement, every company, every revolution, every marriage, every law started with words. Before nations were formed, constitutions were spoken. Before companies were built, visions were declared. Before leaders were followed, they first said something worth following. Words shape how people see you, they shape how they see themselves, they even shape how you see your own potential. And if you understand that, you'll never speak carelessly again. Most people don't realize this. Words are not just sounds, they are seeds. They enter the mind, take root in the heart, and grow into actions, habits, and beliefs. Tell a child he's useless often enough, and you plant a tree of insecurity. Tell that same child he's capable and brilliant, and you water a forest of confidence. That's why impactful communication is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's not about public speaking or sounding clever, it's about influence. And in a world where everyone is talking, the people who will rise are those who learn how to make their words count. Consider this: the average person speaks around 16,000 words a day. That's like writing a 60-page book every 24 hours. Yet 90% of those words are forgotten within minutes. They pass through ears and evaporate. But a few words, the ones that hit the heart, the ones spoken with purpose and precision, stay for a lifetime. Think about the voices that shaped your life. Maybe it was a teacher who said, "You're smarter than you think." Maybe it was a friend who whispered, "Don't give up." Maybe it was a mentor who challenged, "You're made for more." Simple phrases, but they carried weight, and because they did, they shaped your identity. That's the power of impact. So let me ask you, if words have that power, why waste them? Why scatter them like confetti when you could fire them like arrows? Now, the principle of value per word. Here's a communication principle that changed my life. Never speak just to fill silence, speak to fill purpose. Many people speak because they feel they must say something. Impactful people speak because they have something to say. Before you open your mouth in a meeting, in a conversation, on a stage, pause and ask yourself three simple questions. What is the point of what I'm about to say? What do I want the listener to feel? What do I want them to do after hearing this? If you can't answer those three questions clearly, you're not ready to speak. Because words without purpose are noise, but words with purpose are power. Great communicators are not defined by how much they talk, they are defined by how much happens when they talk. They speak and decisions are made. They speak and hearts are stirred. They speak and movements begin. I call this principle value per word. The more value you pack into every sentence, the more impact you create. Imagine two people making a pitch. The first uses 500 words to explain why you should join their vision. The second uses 15 words, and those 15 words move you to action. Who was more powerful? It's not about how many words you speak, it's about how much weight each word carries. The truth is, your words are like currency, and most people are bankrupt because they keep spending words that buy nothing. But those who speak with impact are investors. Every word they spend yields a return. And then speak to be remembered. Let me leave you with this thought. History doesn't remember talkers, it remembers transformers. And the difference between the two is not volume, it's value. When you speak, don't aim to impress, aim to influence. Don't aim to sound smart, aim to spark change. Don't aim to say a lot, aim to say what matters. You don't need to speak like a politician, you don't need 1,000 words, you just need to master the art of meaningful speech. And when you do, you will realize that the most powerful voice in any room is not the loudest, it's the clearest. As we journey deeper into this talk today, I want you to hold on to one golden truth. Backhand index pointing right, the goal is not to say more, the goal is to make more happen with what you say. Part 2, the science of words and silence. Why your words and your pauses shape human behavior more than you think. Words shape reality. Let's go deeper. Most people think words are just sounds that come out of the mouth. But science, psychology, neuroscience, even sociology says otherwise. Words are not just sounds, they are signals that shape how people think, feel, and act. The brain doesn't treat words casually, it records them, it replays them, it builds beliefs around them. Let me give you an example. If someone calls a child stupid often enough, even jokingly, the child's brain begins to accept it as truth. That label becomes a lens through which they view themselves. Soon, they don't try to succeed because they believe they can't. The word shaped their self-image. Now flip that, tell a child consistently that they are capable, gifted, or brilliant, and their mind builds a different story. They try harder, dream bigger, and recover faster from failure, all because of words. This is why we say words build worlds. Nations are born from declarations, wars are ended with agreements, laws are passed with speeches, companies are launched with a single pitch, even relationships begin and end with words like "I love you" or "I'm leaving." Here's the truth: if you want to change the direction of your life, change the language of your life. Because language is not just communication, it's creation. And if you want to shape someone else's reality, whether you're a leader, parent, teacher, entrepreneur, or influencer, you must learn how to use words like a craftsman, not a chatterbox. The psychology of persuasion. Every great communicator understands this. Words are not just tools of expression, they are tools of persuasion. Persuasion isn't manipulation, it's the art of guiding thought. It's the skill of aligning someone's emotions, beliefs, and decisions with a vision, an idea, or a purpose. Here's the secret: people don't respond to information, they respond to emotion. They won't remember every fact you said, but they'll never forget how your words made them feel. This is why Martin Luther King Jr. "I have a dream" speech still echoes across decades, not because it was a list of policies, but because it was a vision painted in words. It's why Steve Jobs could introduce a simple device and make the world crave it, not because he explained the technology, but because he told a story of possibility. Words that move people have three things in common. Clarity: they are simple and easy to understand. Confusion kills impact. Emotion: they stir the heart, not just the head. People move when they feel. Direction: they guide the listener toward a clear action or belief. So when you speak, ask yourself, am I informing or am I transforming? Because the most impactful communication doesn't just transfer knowledge, it transfers conviction. The power of silence. Now let's talk about a secret most people never master: silence. We've been conditioned to think that powerful communication means talking more. But in truth, some of the most impactful communication happens in the spaces between the words. Silence is not the absence of communication, it's the amplifier of communication. Think about music. If a song had no pauses, no rests, no moments of silence, it would be unbearable noise. The silence gives the notes meaning. The same is true in speech. When you pause before delivering an important sentence, you create anticipation. When you pause after a strong point, you create reflection. When you pause instead of reacting in anger, you create respect. Great speakers know this: the pause is often more powerful than the punchline. Jesus was a master of this. There were moments when he said nothing, and that silence spoke louder than words. Nelson Mandela could stop mid-sentence, let the room breathe, and then deliver a sentence that shook the soul. Even in debate, silence can disarm, unsettle, and command attention. In your own speech, don't fear silence. Use it. Pause before important words, pause after profound truths, pause to let the listener feel the weight of what you said, because silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Why brevity commands authority. There's one more scientific truth you must understand: the shorter your message, the deeper it lands. The human brain is wired for simplicity. We remember short sentences and clear statements far more than long explanations. I came, I saw, I conquered, Julius Caesar. Just do it, Nike. Think different, Apple. Yes, we can, Obama. In each case, the power wasn't in complexity, it was in concentration. The fewer the words, the sharper the point. So when you speak, aim for depth, not density. Don't try to say everything, say what matters most. Because when you reduce the noise, the message becomes music. Speak less, influence more. At its core, impactful communication is not about speaking more, it's about saying less and meaning more. It's about understanding that your words are not just sentences, they are seeds that can grow into ideas, movements, and transformations. It's about recognizing that silence is not empty, it's pregnant with meaning. And it's about realizing that persuasion isn't about pressure, it's about clarity, emotion, and direction. When you master the science of words and silence, you no longer talk, you transform. Part 3: I will tell you the techniques to speak powerfully. Impact is a skill, not a gift. Let me start this part with a truth many people don't believe: speaking with impact is not a talent, it's a skill. No one is born a powerful speaker. The people you admire, from presidents to pastors, entrepreneurs to educators, learned how to use words intentionally. They studied the science of influence, they practiced the art of persuasion, and they mastered the rhythm of speech. If they can learn it, so can you. But learning to speak with impact is not about memorizing fancy vocabulary. It's not about acting dramatic or speaking louder. It's about building 5 key communication muscles, each of which I'll break down for you now. Clarity: speak so people understand. Conviction: speak so people believe. Connection: speak so people feel. Conciseness: speak so people remember. Command speak so people act. Master these 5, and your words will never fall flat again. 1. Clarity. If they don't get it, they don't keep it. The first pillar of impactful speech is clarity. Most communication fails not because people aren't listening, but because we're not clear. Clarity means making your message so simple and understandable that even a 10-year-old could grasp it. Why? Because clarity builds trust and trust builds influence. A confused mind always says no. If people don't understand you, they won't follow you, buy from you, believe you, or remember you. Here are 3 techniques to sharpen clarity. The 10-second test. If someone can't repeat your key point after 10 seconds, it's too complicated. Cut the fluff, remove unnecessary words, jargon, and cliches. Speak in simple, direct language. Use one-sentence truths. Every message should have a single sentence that captures its essence. Example, discipline builds the future motivation dreams of. That one sentence is a hook people will carry with them. The most impactful communicators are translators, not terminologists. They take complex ideas and express them in ways ordinary people understand. 2. Conviction. People believe what you believe. The second pillar is conviction. Here's a truth: people don't believe words, they believe energy, and energy comes from conviction. Conviction is the difference between talking and declaring. It's the fire that makes people sit up and listen. It's why you remember speeches like Martin Luther King Jr. "I have a dream," or Winston Churchill's wartime addresses. They believed every word they spoke. Conviction comes from 3 places. Belief in your message. Never speak about what you don't believe. Authenticity amplifies authority. Certainty in your delivery. Speak with certainty, not arrogance but assurance. Avoid filler words like maybe, I think, or sort of. Replace them with I know, I believe, or this is the truth. Emotional intensity. Conviction is not volume, it's passion. You don't have to shout, you just need to let people feel that you mean what you say. Remember, people don't follow the best idea, they follow the person most convinced of their idea. 3. Connections. Speak to the heart, not just the head. 7-8 Mins. Speaking with impact is not about information, it's about transformation. And transformation happens when your words connect with people emotionally. Humans are not logic-driven, we are emotion-driven. We make decisions with our hearts and justify them with our minds. This means that the most impactful speech speaks to the heart first. Here, how to build deep connection. Speak with people, not at them. Use inclusive language, we, us, together. Imagine if we, these words pull listeners into your message rather than keeping them at a distance. Tell stories, not just statements. Facts tell, stories sell. A story bypasses logic and enters emotion. It helps people see what you're saying. Think of how Jesus taught through parables, or how Steve Jobs presented through stories. They didn't bombard people with data, they painted pictures. Use relatable examples. People connect with what they relate to. Use everyday experiences, shared struggles, or common desires. Speak about love, fear, failure, growth, universal emotions that bind us together. When you connect emotionally, you don't just speak to the mind, you anchor your message in the heart. And hearts remember far longer than heads. 4. Conciseness. The sharper the blade, the deeper it cuts. 6-7 Mins. Now let's talk about something counterintuitive. To say more, you must say less. We often assume that long speeches are powerful, but the truth is, power lies in precision. The fewer words you use to deliver your point, the harder it hits. This is why the most memorable quotes in history are short. Time is money. Knowledge is power. Be the change. Here, how to master conciseness. Trim the fat, eliminate words that don't add value. Instead of saying, I think it would be a good idea for us to maybe consider, just say, we must consider. Use strong verbs. Impactful speakers use action-driven verbs that spark movement: build, break, ignite, transform, rise. Deliver in sound bites. Break your key ideas into short, tweet-length sentences. Audiences don't remember paragraphs, they remember punchlines. When your message is concise, it becomes quotable, and when it's quotable, it becomes shareable. That's how ideas spread, not through long speeches but through short, sticky sentences. 5. Command. Words alone don't move people, leadership does. 7-8 mins. Finally, the last pillar of impactful speech is command. Command is not arrogance, it's not intimidation, it's the quiet authority that makes people lean in when you speak. It's the sense that you know where you're going and you're inviting them to follow. Here are 4 ways to command a room. Master your tone. Your tone is more powerful than your words. A calm, measured tone signals authority. A confident, passionate tone stirs action. Avoid monotony, vary your pitch, pace, and rhythm to maintain attention. Control your pace. Don't rush. Powerful speakers don't compete with silence, they own it. Slow down on key points. Speed up when telling a story. Use pauses to let messages land. Own the space. Even though you're not moving physically here, your verbal presence still matters. Speak like you belong where you are. Remove phrases like "I'm not sure if this makes sense" or "I hope this is helpful." Instead, speak with certainty. Here, what I know, this is vital, this matters. End with action. Every impactful speech leaves people with a next step, a thought to act on, a behavior to change, a decision to make. Don't just inform them, mobilize them. Final words, the voice that shapes futures, 3-5 mins. Here, what I want you to remember from this section. Speaking with impact is not about talent, it's about intentional technique. It's about clarity that cuts through noise. Conviction that makes people believe. Connection that touches hearts. Conciseness that makes words memorable. And command that moves people to act. When you master these, your words stop being mere sounds, they become signals of change. And here's the most beautiful part: once you learn to speak with impact, you don't have to raise your voice. People will silence theirs to hear yours. Part 4, we are gonna talk about real-life examples and stories. History's greatest sentences. Let's start with a few words, just a few, that changed the course of human history. I have a dream, Martin Luther King Jr. Just 4 words, yet they ignited one of the greatest civil rights movements of all time. Martin Luther King didn't present a 100-point policy document, he painted a vision. He spoke with passion, purpose, and conviction so deep that his words still echo decades later. Notice he didn't say, "We want equality." He said, "I have a dream," and in that dream he gave people hope, identity, and direction. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, Ronald Reagan. A single sentence, 6 words, and yet those words became a turning point in the Cold War. Reagan didn't explain the politics of the Berlin Wall, he didn't lecture about democracy. He delivered a command, short, sharp, powerful, and it entered history books. We shall fight on the beaches, Winston Churchill. During World War II, when Britain was nearly defeated and fear filled every home, Churchill's words became the nation's backbone. His speeches didn't just inform, they injected courage into a weary people. His use of rhythm, repetition, and resolve turned words into weapons of hope. Yes, we can, Barack Obama. 3 words, that's all, but those 3 words carried the weight of possibility and unity. They weren't just a slogan, they were a movement. Obama didn't just speak to people's minds, he stirred their spirits. The lesson here is simple: impact is not about length, it's about legacy. A few well-chosen words can outlive 1,000 speeches. When silence spoke louder. Sometimes the most powerful communication isn't in what you say, but in what you don't. Small orange diamond, Jesus and the accused woman. When the Pharisees brought a woman accused of adultery before Jesus, demanding he condemn her, he said nothing. He stooped and wrote on the ground. The silence created tension, it forced reflection. Then with one sentence, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone," he dismantled hypocrisy and shifted the atmosphere. One sentence, eternal impact. Small orange diamond, Nelson Mandela's pause. During apartheid negotiations, Mandela would often pause for long moments before responding to aggressive questions. That silence unnerved his opponents. It showed he was in control. It made every word he eventually spoke carry twice the weight. Silence became his strategy, a tool of leadership and authority. Small orange diamond, Mother Teresa's minimalism. Mother Teresa rarely spoke long, but when she did, her words were unforgettable. Once asked how to bring peace to the world, she replied simply, "Go home and love your family." Just 8 words, yet they struck deeper than entire conferences on global peace. The point is this: impact is not always in the noise, sometimes it's in the pause. Silence, when used wisely, makes people lean in. It gives weight to what comes next. Impact in business and leadership. Powerful communication isn't limited to politics or religion. It shapes boardrooms, brands, and billion-dollar companies too. Steve Jobs and the iPhone launch. When Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone in 2007, he didn't bombard the audience with specs. He simply said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." One sentence and the entire technology industry shifted. Why? Because Jobs understood that people don't buy products, they buy stories, and stories are built with words. Jeff Bezos on long-term thinking. Bezos often repeated one sentence to his team at Amazon: "It's always day one." Those 4 words became the cultural DNA of Amazon, a constant reminder to innovate, stay hungry, and never settle. That simple phrase influenced thousands of decisions and billions of dollars. Howard Schultz, Starbucks vision. When Schultz pitched Starbucks' expansion, he didn't talk about coffee beans or margins. He said, "We're not in the coffee business, we're in the people business serving coffee." That one sentence reframed the company's mission and turned a local cafe into a global empire. Back in Medium, the principle is clear. In leadership and business, words shape culture, they drive behavior, they define purpose, and they determine how people see the mission. Personal impact stories. Let me bring it closer to home with a few personal level stories, because impactful speech isn't just for world leaders. It changes ordinary lives too. Small Orange Diamond, the teacher who spoke destiny. Many successful people trace their journey back to a moment when someone spoke belief into them. Maybe a teacher who said, "You're smarter than you think," or a mentor who whispered, "I see a leader in you." That's the power of simple words. They plant seeds that grow for decades. Small Orange Diamond, the friend who saved a life. There are stories of people who were ready to give up, ready to end it all, until someone said, "You matter." Just 2 words, but those words carried enough weight to pull them back from the edge. That's impact. Small Orange Diamond, the parent's lasting words. Some of you still live by a phrase your mother or father used to say, maybe "Don't forget who you are," or "God is always with you." That sentence became a compass. It still guides your decisions today. These are not speeches, they are sentences, but they shaped lives, they rewrote futures. What these stories teach us. If there's one thread that connects all these stories, from kings to children, presidents to parents, it's this. Words change things. They change history. They change movements. They change minds. They change hearts. They change people. But only if they are spoken with clarity, conviction, connection, conciseness, and command. And when you combine those with silence, story, and sincerity, your voice becomes a force that cannot be ignored. One sentence can change everything. I want you to walk away from this section with this truth engraved in your heart. Back in Medium, it doesn't take a lifetime to change a life. Sometimes it just takes a sentence. So choose your words wisely, shape them intentionally, speak them courageously. Because somewhere, someone's destiny is waiting on a single sentence from your mouth. How words sparked revolutions. Words have overthrown empires, started revolutions, and birthed new nations, not by armies, but by ideas spoken aloud. "Give me liberty or give me death," Patrick Henry. In 1775, the American colonies were uncertain about declaring independence from Britain. Many leaders feared war. But one fiery speech by Patrick Henry, just 7 words repeated at its climax, shifted public opinion. Those words were not information, they were ignition. They turned hesitation into resolve and inspired a revolution. Workers of the world unite, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. This rallying cry from the Communist Manifesto was only 6 words, yet it shook the global economic order. It united oppressed workers, fueled political movements, and redefined how nations structured their societies, all because of a single phrase that captured a global frustration. It is time to heal, Nelson Mandela. After decades of apartheid, South Africa stood at a breaking point. Mandela could have chosen revenge. Instead, with a few carefully chosen words on his inauguration day, "It is time to heal," he set the tone for reconciliation. That sentence didn't just calm a nation, it reimagined its future. Lesson: revolutions don't begin with violence, they begin with voices. History doesn't change when people shout the loudest, it changes when someone speaks the truth the clearest. How leaders used words to redefine identity. 5-6 Mins. Sometimes the most impactful words don't create movements, they recreate people. Great leaders understand that language can reshape identity. Small orange diamond. Mahatma Gandhi, my life is my message. Gandhi spoke softly, often quietly, yet every sentence was drenched in principle. This 5-word statement wasn't just about him, it was a challenge to all of us. Live what you speak. His calm, consistent voice inspired millions to pursue freedom through nonviolence, proving that gentle words can move stubborn empires. Small orange diamond. Malala Yousafzai, one child, one teacher, one book, one pen. After surviving an assassination attempt, Malala didn't respond with hatred. Instead, she spoke to the world about education. Her simple sentence reframed education as a weapon more powerful than any bullet. Today, her words fuel global policies, foundations, and classrooms, proof that even a teenager's voice can change international priorities. Small orange diamond. Pope John Paul II, do not be afraid. At a time when communism gripped Eastern Europe, Pope John Paul II's repeated phrase, "Do not be afraid," became a rallying cry for courage. It was spiritual, yes, but also profoundly political. It emboldened millions behind the Iron Curtain and became a catalyst for the fall of regimes. Lesson: words can redefine who people believe they are. When you speak identity into people, not just instructions, you give them a mirror to see their potential. Everyday scenarios where impactful words changed everything. Impactful communication isn't limited to global stages. It happens in homes, classrooms, offices, and hospitals, often in moments that seem small but shape lives forever. The doctor who chose hope. A terminally ill patient once asked his doctor, "How long do I have?" The doctor replied, "I don't know how long, but I do know this: every day is still worth living." That sentence didn't cure the disease, but it changed how the patient lived the rest of his life. It replaced despair with dignity. The CEO who said, "I'm sorry." In 1982, when Johnson & Johnson's Tylenol crisis struck and people died from poison capsules, the CEO, James Burke, didn't hide behind corporate language. He went on television and said 3 simple words: "We are sorry." Those words, honest and humble, restored public trust and are now a textbook example of crisis communication done right. The teacher who spoke potential. There's a well-known study in education called the Pygmalion effect. Teachers were told that certain students were intellectual bloomers, though the label was randomly assigned. Over the year, those students performed significantly better. Why? Because teachers spoke to them as though they were gifted and the students rose to the expectation. Lesson: impact doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers, and those whispers can redirect an entire life. The art of nomming, words that defined futures. There's another subtle form of impactful speech we rarely discuss: nomming. The words we use to label people, projects, or purposes can shape their destiny. Small orange diamond. Iron Lady. Margaret Thatcher. A Soviet journalist coined the nickname Iron Lady, intending it as an insult. Thatcher embraced it, and it became the very symbol of her political persona: strong, unyielding, decisive. One label once spoken reshaped public perception. Small orange diamond. The Dream Team, USA Basketball, 1992. Before the Olympics, they were simply the U.S. men's basketball team. But the moment they were named the Dream Team, they transcended sport, becoming a global phenomenon. Words gave them an identity bigger than their talent. Small orange diamond. The Pearl of Africa, Uganda. Winston Churchill. When Churchill visited Uganda, he described it as the Pearl of Africa. Over a century later, that phrase still defines the nation's global image. A single metaphor shaped how millions see a country. Lesson: the words you use to name something, a project, a mission, a person, often determine how the world sees it. Name things with vision and people will rise to that vision. The unspoken language of legacy. Let's end this extended part by zooming out. Every person you've ever admired, from Jesus to Mandela, from Jobs to Malala, has one thing in common: they understood that words outlive time. Words don't die. They echo in hearts long after voices fall silent. They shape conversations centuries later. They become philosophies, constitutions, religions, revolutions. When Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," he wasn't giving a lecture. He was planting a seed of self-awareness that still blooms 2,400 years later. When Shakespeare wrote, "To thine own self be true," he wasn't just writing a play, he was offering a principle that still guides billions. The lesson here is simple but eternal: speak as if your words will outlive you, because they will. The ripple effect of speech. Words are like stones thrown into the ocean of history. They may seem small when spoken, but their ripples travel far beyond what the speaker can see. The question is not whether your words have power. The question is how you will use that power. Will you use your voice to tear down or to build up? To divide or to unite? To impress or to impact? Because the truth is this: one sentence spoken with intention can rewrite a story, redefine a future, and ripple through generations. This part 5, practical takeaways, life lessons, and closing inspiration, is your final word, your legacy moment. The 3-second rule. If you forget everything else I've said today, remember this. Back in medium, pause for 3 seconds before you speak. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's one of the most transformative habits any communicator can build. Why 3 seconds? Because those 3 seconds allow you to think before you throw. Most people throw words like darts in the dark, hoping they'll land somewhere useful, but those who speak with impact aim their words, they choose them carefully, they fire them with purpose. Before every sentence, take 3 seconds and silently ask yourself, brain, is this necessary? Light bulb, is this helpful? Red, will this add value? If the answer is no, don't speak, because silence is always better than speech that leaves no mark. It is said that Abraham Lincoln once spent hours editing a 2-minute speech, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he respected the weight of every word. That's the standard we must set for ourselves. Words spoken without thought can start wars, break marriages, ruin reputations, and destroy trust. But words spoken with intention can heal, rebuild, empower, and inspire. The 3-second pause is where intention is born. The 4 pillars of impactful speech. Here's a framework you can carry with you forever: 4 simple pillars that summarize everything we've learned about speaking with impact. I call them the 4 M's. 1. Message. Know what you're saying. Every time you speak, ask, what's the message? Don't speak just to speak to say something that matters. The best communicators don't speak in circles, they speak in lines, straight, direct, purposeful. 2. Meaning. Know why you're saying it. Intent gives words power. If your intention is to impress, you'll speak for applause. If your intention is to impact, you'll speak for change. Before you talk, ask, why am I saying this? What do I want to happen because I said this? 3. Method. Know how you're saying it. Tone, pace, rhythm, silence, stories, emotion. How you say something can matter more than what you say. A gentle word can heal where a harsh truth wounds. A pause can scream louder than a paragraph. Choose your delivery with care. 4. Memory. Know what you want them to remember. At the end of every conversation, meeting, or speech, ask, if they forget everything else, what is the one thing I want to remain? Then build your entire communication around that one thing. It could be a principle, a quote, a vision, a promise, a challenge. Whatever it is, speak it like a seed you want to plant deep into their soul. What speaking with impact does to you. 5 Mins. We often talk about how powerful words can change others, but let me remind you, they change you first. When you learn to speak with intention, you become more disciplined. You stop wasting energy on gossip, negativity, and small talk. When you learn to speak with precision, you become more respected. People start leaning in when you speak because they know you don't waste words. When you learn to speak with purpose, you become more influential. You stop chasing attention, attention comes to you. Words don't just build bridges outward, they build foundations inward. They shape your reputation, they sculpt your identity, they define how people remember you. The world doesn't listen to echoes, it listens to voices. And the moment you choose to master your words, you stop being an echo, you become a voice worth following. The responsibility of the speaker. 3-4 Mins. I want to speak directly to your heart now. Your voice is a gift. It's a tool, it's a weapon, it's a bridge, it's a seed. And with that gift comes responsibility. It's not enough to speak, anyone can do that. But to speak with impact means you carry the responsibility of what your words cause. If your words ignite anger, you must own the fire. If your words heal wounds, you must nurture the healing. If your words plant hope, you must water the hope. Be intentional, be responsible, because somewhere someone is living in the echo of what you said. The call to master your voice. As we close this journey, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine if you spoke every word as though it could change someone's life. Imagine if every conversation you had carried weight and purpose. Imagine if your voice became a tool for peace, for truth, for leadership, for love. What would happen to your relationships? To your career? To your business, your community, your legacy? Here's the truth, it would change everything. Because the greatest leaders in history weren't the ones who spoke the most, they were the ones who spoke with impact. So from this day forward, speak less but mean more. Speak softly but powerfully. Speak not for noise but for necessity. Speak to build, not to break. Speak as if the world is listening, because it is. And when you speak to be remembered. Your voice can rewrite the world. I'll leave you with this thought, one that I hope stays with you for the rest of your life. Scroll, words are free, but how you use them may cost you everything or change everything. You don't have to be famous to influence. You don't need a title to transform lives. You just need a voice and the wisdom to use it well. Speak with clarity. Speak with conviction. Speak with courage. Speak with compassion. And above all, speak with impact. Thank you.